Future Riddim leads. I got 'em, you want 'em. Allow me to pass this on to my partner to explain what the hell this video is all about. Thanks, Intro Cubic. Y'all have all heard Trinergy's song Bye. It's a goddamn masterpiece. Well, I figured out how to make the lead in Vital, and I'm about to show you right now. So yeah, not the exact melody because that shit was complex and I didn't want to spend hours just trying to get the melody perfect. That's not the important part. But yeah, Trinergy by lead. I'm going to show you how to make it right after the intro. Stay tuned.
Hello, please excuse the interruption.
Hey, so before we get into the how to Trinergy Future Riddim lead tutorial, I just want to let you know, one, if you don't feel like sticking around and learning and understanding how I built this lead from the ground up, how to process it, how to write melodies with it, and you just want to skip right to downloading the preset yourself, go ahead and check out the description down below. You should see a link there. It requires like a follow on Twitter or something like that, but that is available for you to just download, get right to producing if you don't want to deal with the rest of this video. But for the rest of you, if you could please drop a like if you enjoy the video, subscribe for more videos like this, and comment what you got out of the video and maybe some stuff you'd like me to make tutorials about in the future. That would be awesome. But without further ado, I introduce to you how to Trinergy. Let's go. All right, guys, so we're going to cover a couple things in this video. First off, the most important part, we're going to cover how I made the lead in Vital. After that, I will show you how I processed it after the fact, but the processing is not required because if I play it without the processing, it still sounds pretty damn good. So processing is all up to you. Just for the people interested, I can show you how I processed this beautiful, gorgeous lead. On top of that, there's also this sub patch. And that definitely gives the lead a lot of its beef. And I'll very briefly go over the sub patch for anyone who's interested. And then the final thing I'll be going over is how Trinergy builds these leads and makes them so kind of like glitchy feeling and glidey feeling. So just go over that because that part's important, because if you don't write the melody in the style that Trinergy writes it, the lead isn't going to really hit the same way. It's very dependent on how the MIDI is written. So those are the three things I'll be going over in this video. We're going to start with the first one. How did I make the lead inside of Vital? So let's make an initialized preset. The foundation of this lead is a square wave. So we're going to go to basic shapes. We're going to scroll through the shapes till we hit that beautiful square wave. Then we're going to bring the square wave up 2 octaves by holding shift and dragging on the semitones. Next, we're going to bring that level all the way up. Trinergy's leads have a lot of nice distorted noise. So you'll notice throughout this preset, I'm kind of just pushing everything and pushing up the drive and making things a little broken and distorted, because that's that kind of aesthetic Future Riddim style that we're going for. Next, we're going to add in the heart of the lead that fills in kind of the mid-range with a bunch of noise and beef in the low mids. We're going to be going into the Glorgunk wavetables and finding additive squish. And if you listen to this one, it's just this kind of wet, squelchy, lower end sound. As you'll see, we'll be using all 4 oscillators in Vital to basically create a different layer and fill in a different frequency range of the entire lead to make things feel really full and add a lot of depth to the sound. So right now, you can just leave it like that. We don't need to touch anything else. We will be coming back to that oscillator later. Next, we're going to add the high-end layer. I mean, I know oscillator 1 is already kind of part of the high-end, but oscillator 3 is kind of peak high-end. It adds a bit of a detuned sound to the lead. It gives it kind of that like weird melancholy feel. So we're going to turn on oscillator 3. We're going to bring the pitch up to 48. We're going to keep it as the default saw wave, and we're going to bring the unison up 5 voices and bring the D-tone. We're going to bring the detune down to 7%. So as you can hear, you kind of get the tonality of the square wave, the rumble of the oscillator 2 additive squish 2, and then you get the high end detune of the saw wave. And then we're going to bring the level on that one down a little bit. And then for the finale, in terms of the oscillators, we're going to add the noise oscillator, and we're going to put on River in the factory noises. And this is just to add some more texture to the sound, some more kind of distorted feeling crunch, but it's its own separate texture using the noise. We're going to bring the noise up by 1 octave, and we're going to turn on key tracking. And we're going to bring the level of this down a bit, because later on we're going to be kind of pulling out some of that texture, and so we don't want it to be too overpowering. So this is where we are. So yeah, it's sounding all right. It's a nice lead. You could definitely just use this for something starting out, but we're gonna take it a step further, try to sound like Trinergy. So next, we're gonna take LFO 1. We're going to change the frequency mode to key track, which means that the rate of the LFO will be changed based on what key you press. So the higher an octave you go with the keys or the MIDI that's getting sent into the synth, the faster the rate will be, whereas on the opposite side, the lower you go, the slower the rate will be. This is a technique I use a lot for things like Reese basses, and I noticed that Trinergy's leads have this sort of like sporadic feeling movement to them that sounds kind of based on the pitch that's playing. And I don't know if this is the exact way that Trinergy does their leads, key tracking the rate, but this is a way that I found kind of gives that futuristic feeling movement that his leads have. So basically we're going to bring this transpose knob on the left down to -51. This is just the number I found playing around till it sounded a bit more accurate. So that kind of kept the rate going fast, but it still changed enough in the lower notes that it just gave the right movement. Then we're going to take this LFO 1 and we're going to attach it to the volume of oscillator 2. So it kind of pulses in and out and provides movement, but doesn't take away from that initial fullness that we got with just the 4 oscillators going. We're also going to drag LFO 1 to oscillator 3's level, and we're going to put it to right around here. So before we apply the final LFO modulation, we want the FM oscillator 1 with oscillator 3. Click FM to oscillator 3, we bring the FM all the way down, and we let the LFO rate modulate the FM. So it's just adding more movement, more depth. It's little subtle things like that that really make quality sound design. But now it is time to move on to the effects. So starting off with the effects, we're going to add an EQ. Now if you're enjoying this Vital skin, go to my website sonicweaponry.com and you can download this exact skin for free. I also have a video going over how to make your own custom skins. So feel free to go check all that out if you're liking the skin and you want your own custom skin or this skin. But yeah, back to it. We got the EQ, and now basically what we're going to do with the EQ is just boost the shit out of everything. We're going to boost the shit out of all the highs. Now that's going to get a little bit harsh. We're going to cut the lows for the most part because we don't need any of the lows. We're going to fill things in with a sub after. And then we're going to just kind of scan through and we're going to find a spot to place this notch where it makes the lead settle down a bit and not fill up too much. Yeah, when I put it in this range right here, it feels like it takes away a bit of mud and lets the high end shine a little bit more, but still retains some of the beef in the lower mids. So I'm gonna drop it right there. And then next we're gonna move on to some distortion. Because like I said, this lead, if you listen to the original song, there's definitely some distortion going on. I'm not sure that Trinergy used Vital to make this sound. I kind of doubt it. So we're limited to Vital's distortion if we're doing this all in box. I figured it had to be something similar to Bit Crush. So I put on Bit Crush just to kind of give it that kind of glitchy crunch. I throw the drive almost all the way up, I brought it down just a tiny bit, and I just left it like that. Then we go to the compressor, and this is where we do a little bit of sculpting in terms of the tone and the dynamics of the lead. So we're gonna bring the low end down a bit, because like I said earlier, we don't need any low end in this lead. This lead needs to be filled in by a really clean, saturated, fat sub. So there's no point in having a bunch of low end information in the lead. Then we're gonna bring the mids up just a tad. We're gonna leave the highs where they are, but we're gonna adjust the ratio. We're also gonna adjust the ratio of the mids. And we'll adjust the ratio of the low end as well, just to kind of make it not feel so thin and compressed. We'll still have some harmonics sitting there. We can also adjust the ratio on these. I kind of always just adjust the ratio based on how it feels, so I'm just gonna do that real quick. All right, and then finally we're gonna bring the attack down a bit, and we're gonna bring the release up. So that just kind of tightens things up a bit. Here's with and without the multiband. With, it's kind of distorting a bit too much. It's kind of clipping a little bit, and it's just kind of too full on in your face. But we put the compressor on, and things are a bit more tamed. So to top things off, we're gonna add a filter to the mix. It's going to be a low pass filter because we need to shave off just a smidge of the high end. This is a very high end heavy sound, and we want to tame that a little bit, make it not as raspy, easier to mix, sound more clean and polished, and allow room for other elements inside of our drop. So we're going to just put the low pass filter all the way up at the top here, but then we're going to bring the key tracking down so that the higher the note you play, the more this kind of cuts off some of the high end. As you can see, if I go super high, it's kind of saving our ears a little bit. Then we're going to bring up the drive just a bit, because when we change this to a ladder filter, it's going to give things a bit of a warmth, kind of saturated feeling. And so this is the part where I know this sounds almost nothing like the bi lead, and that's because of the importance of the MIDI notes that you use, which I'm going to get to in a second. But before we get there, we have one final step to do, which is to bring the voices down to 1, so only one note can be played at a time. And then we're going to mess with the glide a little bit. We're going to bring the glide up to around 0.019 seconds. We're going to bring the slope of the glide to here. So the glide is basically when you have it on legato, which I just turned on. Legato means that when you're holding down one note and you press another note, that means that instead of re-triggering the sound, it's gonna just slide right into that other sound. And the glide kind of controls how the pitch slides into the next note. And so we added a bit of glide so that it kind of glides into the next pitch, and then we add a slope so that it basically makes key changes feel a bit more drastic and like rubber bandy. I don't know a good way to describe it, but you'll see what I mean when I go through how the MIDI is written. But this right here is the finished lead, as you can hear. And there is one thing that's completely optional that you can do. You can add a flanger onto it, and that'll just make things feel a bit more robotic and just give the lead a cool space. I'm not sure if Trinergy did this in the actual original song, but it's just something I noticed, that the flanger sounds really nice on this lead. And so that's something you can just adjust to whatever sounds good. But all right, let's get into how to write with this lead. So as you can see here, there's 3 different lines of MIDI. Now the middle line here, I honestly can't really tell if it makes a difference, but it kind of feels like it does. So this middle section isn't really necessary, but what happened was Trinergy figured out a lead melody. So let's take this top line as the lead melody. And this is how it sounds without all this other stuff beneath it. Which sounds alright, but it's missing this kind of like, it's like this kind of bouncy glide to it. And that comes in from this bottom line of leads where it's playing the same notes, but they're a little off grid from the main lead, and they're in a much lower octave. And so basically what you can do is you can take your lead, and I'll do it manually right here. So let's say this is our lead line. We'll just take this first half. You can take this and duplicate it to the same place but in a different octave. And then you offset it a little bit because of how the legato works and the glide works. It'll play the start of the lower note, the lower octave version of the note, and then jump into the higher octave version of the note. And that'll give a really cool effect. See how it gives that kind of like, I really don't know how to describe it, but I'm sure you guys understand what I'm talking about. You can also experiment with changing the length of these notes. And so that's, you kind of just experiment and mess around with that. And basically the changing of notes between far apart octaves with leads like this can really give some weird pitch bendy twang to your leads and to your melody. And that's the only way that this lead that I showed you how to make really works in the way that Trinergy makes it work, because the way he writes his leads and his melodies is kind of weird like that, with like little glitchy stray notes in different octaves that create these cool glides. And so that's kind of the key to how to use this lead. On top of that, I added some multiband compression based off of the OTT preset in Ableton to kind of bring out that crunch and some of the noise that we had layered in the vital patch. I also put on 2 dispersers because, one, I like throwing dispersers on like every single Future Riddim lead or bass I ever make, because disperser just beefs things up and gives it this cool kind of wet dispersy tone. I don't really know how to describe it. I always just kind of do random settings just based on sound and feel. These are what I put for this. Then I added a saturator just to beef things up, give some more harmonics. And usually when I put OTT on something, I always put a saturator on later on just to compensate for the thin compressed sound that OTT can give stuff. Then I threw on a Soothe 2. If you don't have a Soothe 2, then basically just do some manual surgical EQing. But like I said, this is a kind of high-end heavy sound, so Soothe 2 is my savior. I just throw it on anything that has a harsh high end and just mess with the settings till I find a nice medium where it kind of dulls some of those harsh frequencies, but it doesn't take too much away from the original sound. And then to top things off, I just did some EQing. Because when you play it with the sub, I honestly don't know why I had that dip in there, but yeah, just do a little bit of EQing, whatever sounds nice. I'm going to be doing some tutorials on like things like mid-side EQing in the future, because I know a good amount of you guys aren't completely sure what you're doing with EQing or how to strategically use EQ for things like sound design or just to clean up your drop. So yeah, that's something to look forward to. You can always click the subscribe button down below to make sure that you see those tutorials when they come out. And then finally is this sub that's playing the same melody of the leads. Like I said, I didn't go too deep into cleaning up the melody and making sure it all worked, but it was good enough to show off. Basically, what I do for the sub is something I learned from Kanon, where it's a triangle wave in Serum's normal sub area. Then you add a square wave on top of that for some more harmonics. And then you filter out the square wave and you put a bump with the filter to really just kind of saturate the sub frequencies. And then you link that cutoff to an LFO that kind of ramps up so that it's not making it too initially punchy. And then that's about all you do there. Then you go into Ableton and you add an overdrive right on the bottom. It's very subtle, but it actually kind of beefs up subs. Then the famous kick tight plugin, you tune it to whatever key you're working in. I don't know if this is tuned to this example, but it wasn't that important. But kick tight is an amazing corpus preset that really beefs up your subs. Then I added a saturator for good measure, then a really subtle EQ, and that's all you have to do. for this fat, beautiful sub. So that is how to sound like Trinergy, I guess, or how to make the Trinergy buy lead, or how to Trinergy Future Riddim lead, whatever you want to call it. I hope that helped. Definitely tag me on Twitter, Discord, wherever if you make anything with it. I'd love to hear what kind of cool stuff you guys make, and let me know down in the comments if this tutorial was helpful, what sorts of things you want to see me teach you guys in the future. And other than that, my name is Qbik. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and remember to believe in yourself. This journey as a producer is hard, but if you persevere, it'll end up being worth it in the end. Have a great rest of your day. Keep learning. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.
Searching blindly through the forest.